What's going on, y'all? I want to show you Smart EQ 3 from Sonible, and this is what Sonible calls an intelligent EQ. This is one that I've been interested in for a while, so I'm glad to get my hands on it and check it out because I've been kind of about artificial intelligence in some of these pro audio products. But this EQ with the artificial intelligence built in, Sonible says it's going to make your tracks more transparent and correct any tonal balances that may have occurred in your tracks. New features in Smart EQ 3 includes the ability to group your instances together, which is really nice, and have it learn all together as one, which I'll show you here shortly. So let's take a look at the overview and controls of it. So I've got the help menu on, so anything that you hover over, will tell you what it is. So this green button here is going to be the button that you hit when your track is playing for it to analyze and process. Universal, you hit the drop down here. If you're not sure what you want to, if you're not sure, like we've got acoustic guitar, vocal high, these are things that I've recently put it on. So if you select something from the factory profile, it's going to show up here. And universal is just your standard if you don't know, if you really don't have a choice to select there. You have 8 instances here that you can choose. Undo, redo. By default, this analyzer is off. That turns it on. And down here, you've got bypass. Here, you've got your standard controls for an EQ, your width, frequency. This does do, I believe it's in the settings. Yeah, you do have a linear phase mode here, which is nice that you can activate in the settings. And you also have mid-side as well. And one thing I noticed is when you can double click to add a frequency point, right click on it, and you have your filter selections. You have a tilt here as well, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's close this instance and bring up one I have on the vocal, which I already have set flat. And this button up here is going to allow you to create groups. So I have a vocal group and the guitar group, and this L1, L2, L3 is your different layers. So what you want out in front the most, you're going to put in layer 1, and what you want, behind that, you put in level 2. If you want something even further back, you can select layer 3. So I've got vocal layer 1, guitar layer 2, and I'm going to hit play, then I'm going to click this learn button, and it's going to start to process it.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night.
Okay, so that took pretty much no time at all, just a few seconds. So it does learn pretty quickly. And if we close this now, analyzer on, what I like about this is these 2 tracks I have in a group, I can select them both, even though I'm just using one instance of the plugin, and see how both of those tracks analyze in one EQ instance.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight.
So you see the guitar is purple and the vocal is blue. So this green knob here, you can increase the strength of the smart filter that's been applied to the track here. So the more I turn that up, the more it's going to increase the strength of that. And we could also change the width of that as well. You can also right click on this and go to dynamic and turn this into a dynamic EQ. So now you will see all these frequencies that it's adjusted move dynamically.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night, sometimes you gotta lose.
And clicking this plus will split this. So now you have 2 separate instances. If you wanted, say dynamic on the low end and not on the high end, you can do that by splitting it there.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no.
All right, let's set this back. All right, so let's bypass this now and see what it has done. And in the groups, we can bypass all, which is going to bypass both instances that we have in the group of the plugin. So I'm going to play it with what the smart filter has applied, and then I'll bypass it. And you'll see bypassed inside these boxes when it's bypassed.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night. Sometimes you gotta lose to win a game. Say, have you ever needed someone so bad? If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night. Sometimes you gotta lose to win a game. Say, hey.
Okay, so I do think that the Smart EQ3 sounds a little better. It is pretty subtle to me. And one thing that I've realized that I don't like about this is I can't see. We see what the smart filter has done, but I don't really know what the smart filter has done, because going across the bottom here, as pretty much every other EQ plugin has, is your frequency range from your 20 hertz up to 20K. So we see we have a dip here, but I can't look at this and tell where this dip is, which to me is pretty frustrating, especially if I don't really know EQ and I'm trying to use this to kind of learn EQ. I would kind of like to know what the smart filter did and what it applied. So we've got a dip here, we've got another dip here, but just no way to tell where this is. And if I double click on this, it moves the filter a little bit, but then I can see that that's at 152. This boost here, see, it changed that, 462. This dip somewhere around 4.4K. So that I find frustrating, because I don't want to have to just keep clicking to find out the values of where this smart filter is applying its changes at. So that's one of the biggest things that it's really bothered me with this. Another thing, I'm really surprised that this did not roll off any low end. Let me play this again. I didn't really pay attention to what's going down in the lows here. Let's take a look at that.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night.
Okay, so there's not really anything below 85 hertz here, so it not applying a high pass filter is, I guess, fine. And speaking of a high pass filter, you can go in, of course, and change these EQ once the smart filter has applied itself. You can go in and make your own edits. Like for this, I would honestly like to add some more high end to it. So let's just go ahead and do that. Give it a shelf here. 8K, that's good. That's not letting me boost from there. Okay. All right, let's take a listen to that.
If it makes you cry, 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 'cause all you do is fight, can't get no sleep at night. Sometimes you gotta lose to win a game.
So to me, that's a lot more noticeable difference from what I've added there. So what I've noticed in using this is the smart filter it does EQ for tonal balance. It's not something that's going to the EQ curve isn't going to give you any character. I guess I'll say it that way. It's not going to beef up the low end and kick in a lot of air for you. That's something, using this you will have to do yourself. But the smart filter does apply what I feel is a good starting point. Let's turn that back on there. So my final thoughts on the Smart EQ3. I feel that artificial intelligence is getting better, and it's going to be really interesting to see where it's going to be at in a few years. I do feel like this is not a set and forget it EQ. If you just want to correct some tonal balances, yes, you can do that, but I think you will need to EQ things a little further with it to get it where you want it personally. Of course, depending on what are you wanting to do with it. I feel like at this point I'm kind of an old head where I like to get my hands on and EQ things myself. So I don't think this would be the first EQ I would reach for, but I can see myself using this if I'm having a problem or troubles EQing something and I feel like I can't get it right. I'd say, well, let me see if this Smart EQ 3 can get this to where I'm struggling with it. So the grouping feature is really cool because it can remove masking between two tracks, which I really like that feature. And that's something I've been wanting in a plugin for a long time now. And we are getting to the point the last few years where the plugins are able to talk to each other. We're seeing more and more plugins be able to do that. So, having multiple instances of this in your session, they're able to talk to each other. And that's a really cool feature. And curious to see where that as well will take us in the future. So I'm impressed with what Sonible is doing, and can't wait to see what else they do with Smart EQ. I've got a link in the description if you want to check this out more. Any questions, comments, let me know, and I'll catch y'all next time. I want to invite you to check out my podcast, the Faders Up Podcast, where we discuss pro audio and beyond. We discuss everything from recording to gear to the music business. So if you're an audio engineer, songwriter, recording artist, music producer, this podcast is for you. We recently started season 2, and we're going to have a lot of listener questions on this season, as well as some really cool guests that's lined up and giveaways as well. So if you've already subscribed and followed the podcast, thank you. If you haven't, it's available on all platforms, and I encourage you to check it out. Also, rate it and review it and let us know what you think.